A heavy mist rolled over Camp Ironwood, thick and unmoving like the breath of war itself. Trees stood silent, their leaves quivering gently in the cold breeze. Somewhere in the distance, the barked voice of a superior echoed routine orders, but the camp felt different today, like something was about to change. Among the early risers stood Jess Monroe, a tall, cocky recruit with a smirk as sharp as his jawline. He adjusted his uniform with dramatic flair and muttered just loud enough for others to hear. "Another day in paradise, huh?" There was a cockiness in his tone, calculated arrogance dressed up as humor. A few recruits chuckled half-heartedly, but their laughter was thin, forced. Monroe liked control, liked being the center of attention. But inside, there was a restlessness he refused to name. Then suddenly, everything paused. A strange chill swept through the air. The trees stood still. Even the birds seemed to hush. A sound broke the silence: boots. Purposeful, heavy, each step echoing like a heartbeat. Everyone turned. Time stopped. Through the fog, a figure emerged. Not running. Not marching. Just walking, like the air itself parted for her. She was a woman, but nothing about her felt fragile. Her face was half-burned, the skin a harsh memory of fire. But the untouched side carried a calm only found in those who had walked through hell and returned. One eye green, the other stormy gray. Both empty of questions, but heavy with stories. Monroe whispered under his breath, smirking. "Looks like Halloween came early." The words slipped out like poison. A few recruits snorted awkwardly. But something about the air shifted, a discomfort none could name. Then. Attention! All snapped into formation. The commanding officer stepped forward. "Meet your combat instructor. Major Evelyn Shaw, call sign, Phantom Viper." The silence that followed was louder than any scream. Even the wind stopped. Major Evelyn stopped in front of Monroe. Her eyes didn't blink. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "Private, when you look at me, what do you see?" Monroe shifted, shrugged with uncertainty. "A soldier, ma'am." She didn't flinch. "No. You see my scars. But what you don't see are the people who gave their lives, so I could walk away with them." She turned to the entire unit. "If you can't respect these scars, you don't deserve this uniform." The words hit Monroe harder than a slap. The grin faded. His arrogance cracked. Training began the next day, and it wasn't ordinary. This wasn't about fitness. It was about endurance. About breaking through the mind. Daylight brought brutal physical drills. But the nights were personal hell. Blindfolded in the woods. Carrying injured soldiers for miles. Listening to dying screams in simulations. Feeling helpless. Learning empathy, not from lectures, but from exhaustion. Monroe, once the loudest, strongest, began to unravel. He could run a mile in 6 minutes but had no idea how to carry a teammate's grief. One night, while the camp slept, Monroe sat alone outside the mess hall, staring at the stars. Evelyn walked past. He muttered. "Do you ever feel like you don't belong here?" She paused. Then quietly said. "Every single day. Until I earned the right to stay." And kept walking. The words stayed behind. Inside Evelyn's quarters, a single dog tag hung on the wall. Captain Darren Kruger, 141st Infantry. She ran her fingers across it. Flashback. A burning Humvee. Gunfire. Smoke. She dragged a wounded officer from the flames. But he was whispering. "I sold out the location. Loyalty's expensive these days." He raised a gun to her head. She didn't hesitate. One shot. He was dead. She survived. They called her a hero. But the guilt burned deeper than her skin. Monroe had changed. He now watched, listened, and learned. One stormy night, he crept into the records archive. He found it, an envelope marked Operation Black Sand, Top Secret. Subject, Shaw, Evelyn, Heroism. Inquiry. Clearance, denied. Inside, a photo. Evelyn, bloodied, carrying a child on her back, dragging a wounded soldier with one arm. Monroe stared for minutes. No mockery. Only respect. Days later, Evelyn found an envelope in her locker. No name. But the handwriting. Phantom. You saved me, when I thought I was the enemy. Your silence was louder than my shame. I finally get it. Scars are not shame. They are proof of survival. And now, I want to be someone you're proud of. V2-inch. She smiled. Then, for the first time in years, a tear fell. Evelyn and Monroe were sent on a covert mission to Syria. A bombed-out orphanage, trapped behind enemy lines. Gunfire. Landmines. Chaos. 13 children. Hiding in silence. Hungry. Afraid. A sudden blast. Monroe was crushed beneath metal beams. Go. Leave me. Evelyn's voice was fierce. I watched one child die once. I won't watch again. She pulled him out. Then went back, alone, and carried the children out one by one. Inside the evac helicopter, Evelyn sat, her arms bleeding, her forehead wrapped in gauze. One little girl leaned forward, kissed her cheek. Are you an angel? Evelyn, exhausted, smiled faintly. No, sweetheart. I'm someone who made it back from hell. Monroe, staring into the sky beside her, whispered. Major. You're not Phantom Viper anymore. You're a light. That kept burning, even in war's darkest places. A year later, the Hall of Valor at Camp Ironwood unveiled 2 new portraits. Major Evelyn Shaw, Phantom Viper. Sergeant Jess Monroe, Phantom V2. New recruits stood before them. A young cadet asked. Who were they? An instructor smiled. One was a woman. Who pulled lives from fire with a body half burned. And one was a man. Who laughed at scars. But then learned what they meant. Beneath their portraits, carved in stone. Scars are not shame, they are the price of sacrifice. They are the language of love. And the silent proof of survival. This story isn't about war. It's about those who return from it. Quietly. With wounds that never fully heal. But who teach others. Fighting isn't the hardest part. Living, and healing, is true bravery.